Greetings, welcome back. Thank you for joining us for another month. And we've got a very exciting month to show you this. We've been so excited behind the scenes. So welcome, thanks for joining us. Hi to Chris and Jay and Hannah and Sharon and Bruno. Thanks for saying hi on the questions. My name is Simon Walker. I'm head of learning and training at Maxon, and I'm delighted to be joined by not one, but two Maxon master trainers, Dustin and Lionel. Welcome, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi there. This is going to be an interesting series of months because we're going to be looking at Redshift and jumping into Redshift, and the aim is to help you expand your knowledge in Redshift. And we're going to tell you even more about that in a couple of minutes' time. But just whilst we're here, there's also an exciting week for us because in the previous weeks we've released a bunch of new features for almost everything that we do across Cinema and Redshift and Red Giant and Universe and Forger. And also you can see ZBrush now. If you've got a Maxon One subscription, then you can see in the Maxon app you can install ZBrush. So we're very excited all of that. So this is why I'm showing you this page. If you just go onto the maxon.net site and go and look at Maxon One, you can see all the various new things that you can try out. And also, don't forget that we run many of these sessions. Here's the events page, maxon.net, just go to events, and you can see who we are. We're talking about the Redshift Challenge, but also FMX starts this week, and so we got people attending that. If you're there, try and search out for Max and Jonas, who will be on site as well. Max has got an amazing guest on his Maxon Color Show coming up on May the 5th. And we've got even more things, including the weekly VFX and Chill. You know the routine. This is why you're here. So just have a look at that. Make sure you don't miss those. And if you have missed them, please have a look at the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And we'll be putting up shortly the video for the last in the series of Demystifying for April, where we're doing voyages across applications, where Chad and I present how you can get 3D objects in Adobe Premiere via Moguts. I know, it seems like magic, but there's quite an interesting workflow, and you can save a whole bunch of time in editorial doing it that way. So we'll have that up and ready for you very soon. So also, what have I forgotten? Oh yes, if you want to have a free t-shirt on us, please go to the merch link, and you'll see inside the download section of this webinar that you'll see this document, the links document, and that's where all the information is. We have a new password for this link, and it's Redshift Challenge. So Redshift Challenge is an interesting one. This could be a good time to ask you, both of you, what is a Redshift Challenge and what are we attempting this month?
So I can start with this because I'm starting off the challenge today. The Redshift Challenge is more or less leaving the material that we're working on this month throughout each of our different parts of the series to you all, the community, as well as introducing a sabotage that is going to hopefully throw a kink in the way that we would normally work as artists, so that you can see us maneuver our way through obstacles. And so yeah, this month or this week I'm starting off, and so you will be able to choose the model that we're working on for this week, and we'll also be able to choose the sabotage, which is just a normal Redshift tool that I'm not allowed to use. So the idea behind this is to see me sweat and see what I would do in a slightly different workflow or environment. And as trainers, it's really important that we share those moments of failure, if there are some, and we talk about it. So it's going to be a very interesting series for us trainers that are presenting.
Yeah, and it was your idea.
Yeah.
It was my idea, so
yeah. You get to start, absolutely. And joking aside, this is a situation that you could find yourself in. in if you're working for a client or a new production, and we wanted to break you out of your comfort zone. If you always go to the area light, for example, we wanted to suggest things that, or show you rather, in this process how you could get around certain problems, if you like, and try new techniques that you hadn't tried out in Redshift. That's the key idea behind this session. So we have got some ZBrush models, and so Paul and Ian from the ZBrush team have kindly helped us, and they've given us some models. In fact, I can show you what they are here. Here we go. So we're going to vote. We're going to ask you to vote on which models we should use, and then we'll ask you in a minute which parts of Redshift that Dustin has to avoid. So these are the models from both Gorilla, Zombie, Captain America, TIE Fighter, and the Cthulhu banana. And what are we calling that purple box? Is that sci-fi box?
I maybe yeah, sci-fi box. There we go. That works out just well.
So these are the raw sculpts. And then we're going to ask, you are going to tell Dustin which one he should use, and then we'll jump into the tool. So in fact, let's bring this up. So because we're going to do this in an hour, Dustin's going to do it in under an hour now. So the more talking we do now, the less time he has. So let me bring up this poll. So under the models here, if I launch the poll. Right, so as a reminder, the idea is whichever you vote on, that is the model that Dustin has to use. And so lots of you are clicking on this at the moment. I won't give away which is winning.
It's funny.
So it's interesting. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so. Oh, it's neck and neck on a couple of them.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting to see this on our end. Yeah.
And we can't vote. Too bad.
I know. I just realized I tried. I won't lie.
You can't vote for yourself, exactly.
Ooh,
right,
it's
okay.
Pretty close.
It's very close. I'll give another 10 seconds and then we'll end the poll. 75% of you have voted. So that's a whole bunch of dozens and dozens of people have chosen. Right, okay, I'm going to call it. Let's close the poll and then let's share the results. So, by a whisker.
Yeah.
Wow.
Zombie Captain America has won on this particular poll. So there you go. There's your model, Dustin. Right.
Awesome.
So some Edward was cheering on for Zombie Captain America. Yes, we got it there. Okay, so yes, Sharon, we are a bunch of savages, absolutely. So let's choose. Poor old Dustin. Let's punish you now by launching the poll of which things inside Redshift you cannot use. So some of these will be tricky. If you're voting, then if you vote for Dome Light, for example, you're voting that Dustin can't use the Dome Light in this.
Oh, come on, everyone. I see this here. Okay.
So Dustin, you like using multiple lights, don't you, quite often? So
yeah, that's the thing. So this is good.
Post effects is a tricky one as well, if you've got that as regularly part of your arsenal of techniques and so on. So it's a tricky one. Do you go to bitmap textures usually, or do you use procedural ones? So whatever you vote for, Dustin can't use on this session. So again,
so do we include the dome light as a multiple light?
Well, if we choose multiple lights, then you can't use any more than one. So dome light would be one.
Yeah, this will be interesting.
So I'll give it another few seconds. As Andy says, this is hilarious. I like Dustin, but I feel like I'm punishing him. We feel the same.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to call it now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's close the poll and then share the results.
Oh, man.
Oh, again, by a whisker, multiple lights. This is your go-to technique, Dustin.
Yeah, it's interesting for a photographer that usually works in that type of environment. So this will be fun. We've talked a little bit about some of these workflows before in previous sessions. So
Excellent.
yeah,
Right.
let's go ahead and check it out.
Okay, so right, I'm going to hide the results here. And I think it's time to share your screen. I will send the screen over to you, Dustin. I'll
Sure.
make you a presenter. So what we thought we'd do, we'd be interactive with this. So we're going to let Dustin get on with it in a second. But if you've got suggestions as he gets stuck, you're not going to get stuck, Dustin. But if you've got any suggestions or workarounds, please throw those into the comments and then we'll talk about them as we go through.
Yeah, okay. So we thought it would be cool to start off in ZBrush first. Let me move the panels out of the way here for the webinar. There we go. And so we thought it'd be easy or kind of cool to start off in ZBrush. So I'm going to go ahead and load the Z tool here from Ian. Go ahead and give this a moment. All right, so we have our ZBrush sculpt, and what we're going to do, launch this or GOZ this right away into Cinema. So
What
right
is
next to
GOZ, Dustin? Anyone who
GOZ is the link between ZBrush and other applications. So in our case, it's Cinema 4D. And what this is going to do is allow us to sculpt in ZBrush with poly paint and various things, and then kick that directly over into Cinema 4D so we can start to work in a Redshift and rendering. And yeah, so this is going to be interesting. Let's see how the brain lulls go today. All right, so GOZ, we're going to choose GOZ all, and we'll have a pop-up here just saying that we're going to run GOZ. Let's go ahead and click continue. This will export here a moment. All right, now we can pop over into Cinema. There we go. And we can see our zombie head sculpt, and everything is looking pretty good. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is actually get rid of the cube. So we have a little cube in here. We'll go ahead and just delete that so we won't need that in our scene. And we're going to choose Redshift as our render engine in the render settings. And actually thinking about this, what I am going to do is load in my own render preset. And so what this is going to do here is set our output at a slightly higher resolution. So we have a 1:1 aspect ratio. I'm going to lock that down and go to 2048 here a moment. And let's see if there's anything else that I want to adjust. Let's see, we have a relative render path here so that we could render this out next to the project file. And I do have some AOVs set up here. Let's see, have to activate, there we go, activate that render setting. And so I do have some AOVs here that are set up for us so that we can kind of visualize certain parts of this as we're rendering. All right, so let's go ahead and close that out. I'm going to save this project file.
Whilst you're doing that, Dustin, Sharon had a good observation. Is it cheating to use geometry as lights?
I guess that is more or less up to the community. It's really not yeah.
It's not a light, is it? So you can
Single source.
Yes.
Single source. Okay.
Single source, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, I think we run this. It'll be challenging. So let's just create something kind of cinematic, and we'll go for it. We'll see what happens here. What am I doing? Okay, there we go. Import from ZBrush, and we'll just call this zombie cap C4D. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and we can group everything a minute, and we'll just call this cap, and then we'll start with our single light, which I feel will be, this will be interesting. So we'll go ahead and start off with an area light. And I'm thinking probably the way that I'd like to work with this is probably going to be used as a rim light. So we'll start off with a silhouette. And so what I'm going to do is hold down Control or Command, and we can create a null object with that, placed it right where our area light was. And so now I can go to the area light, and we can Shift C for the commander, bring up our target tag. There we go. And then we can make the null the target here. And then we can just call this our target null. There we go. And this is going to allow us to move our light. There we go, move our light. Let's go ahead and just get out here. Create our rim light here, and we'll see. We might actually switch this out for a spotlight later. We'll see how this starts to work as we move forward. So next I'm going to create a camera, and we'll assign a Redshift camera tag. There we go, Redshift cameras. Well, maybe not. There we go. And then we can assign this a protection tag once we get this lined up. So I'm going to change my focal length to something, let's see if we want to do, I'll start maybe with 85.
So this is an interesting thing, Dustin. Usually you probably don't do a commentary as you're working, just live like this. So
Yeah,
how much is this distracting you? Or is it helping?
It's distracting a little bit. You know, it's a little bit different than most of our training for the webinars, because we're able to you know, prepare a little bit for that. And so this on the spot, like load the model in, we don't know what we're using, don't know what we're doing. This is interesting. It's definitely a challenge. So first thing, before I place this here, I'm just going to press NQ on the keyboard to get rid of my textures. And we can actually change our display, and we'll go to quick shading here so we can see the model a bit better. And so what I'm thinking is we can set up almost like maybe start off with like a goofy kind of cinematic selfie for the zombie here. There we go. Looks a lot less gnarly from this angle. And so we'll place a protection tag on the camera, so that locks it down, and now we can't move it. So what we can do here is go ahead and middle mouse, and we can change one of our other cameras to perspective. I'll let this save here. And so now, actually let's go ahead and change this. We'll go to panel, arrangement, and we'll do 2 views stacked. And so this is going to allow us now to change the bottom one to perspective, and then we have one to work in. So NC, there we go. So we can see this shaded, and then NQ, there we go. And so the interesting part about this is that the bottom camera is still in the 36mm focal length. And I actually like that a lot. Just looking at this, I like the distortion that it has there. So we're actually going to change our main camera's focal length. We'll maybe say something like 40. Move our protection tag down to the area light, and then we can zoom in a little bit.
Anders has a good suggestion, Dustin. Anders is saying, how about creating a dome or a half with reflective material and a noise? And will it indirectly light the zombie?
It definitely would. So what I'm actually doing here, I can explain this as I'm fumbling around maybe a little bit. I'm actually going to use this rim light to bounce off of a card to create our key light. And so we're going to be able to work with a system that should work pretty well. And we can actually go ahead and just get started with that here a minute before we get to materials. So my process, I usually like to kind of set the stage and then work with materials after I do my lighting. And so that's because most often, like, your materials are going to, you know, look different regardless of what type of lighting you put on, or depending on what type of lighting you have on the model. So in this case, looking at this, I think we can, let's see, we'll place a plane in the scene and we can call this background. And so what we'll do here is just go ahead and rotate and then place this behind our zombie.
Loving the discipline of naming your different tags.
Yeah.
This is good.
I might have quite a few things in here at the end of it, so I just need to make sure doing this a little bit more indirect is going to be, yeah, this is going to be interesting. So with the background, we won't start with materials yet. For the light, let's see here. I'm actually going to change to a disk, and we can make this bi-directional. So with this one light, this should bounce off pretty decent to the background as well, and kind of give us hopefully some type of fall off back there because that rim light is, yeah, it's working pretty well. All right. So at this point,
a good question from, sorry to interrupt, we got a good
yeah, go
question
ahead.
from Giuseppe. Are you working with a decimation mesh with texture or any poly paint? This is a very, very good question.
Yeah, very good question. So what we haven't seen yet is that I do have poly paint. You can see all of the Vertex tags here, the Vertex color tags, and there is poly paint on each of these. There we go. So if I click into it, you can see that this is the poly paint detail that we have to work with on this single piece. And I just have it currently disabled in the viewport. So each of these pieces, there we go. Let's click into it. There we go. So each of these pieces are going to have their own bits of poly paint. When this comes in, if we check out the material manager, these are our standard C4D materials. And so I'm actually going to, let's go ahead and just do this now. I'm just going to delete these, and I'm just going to use the Vertex color tag to run the color of the different maps that I want to use. So Sharon, I see your question here. What is poly paint? Poly paint is, Lionel, you want to answer that while I set some of this up?
Yeah.
It might be
I
a
was
little bit
referring-
easier.
It's a ZBrush feature which allows to paint directly on a mesh without any UV. It stores actually the paint on the vertex level. So it's very easy to use because you don't have to unwrap anything.
Yeah, it's a very, if you're used to maybe even body paint in Cinema or something like Substance Painter, it's very similar to that, but it allows you to paint directly on your model in ZBrush. So here we are, I think, pretty much set up to start moving into Redshift. So I'm going to click over into my Redshift layout. And there's not a whole lot that is special with this layout. I did put the render view over on the left side, and then I have the node editor sitting right next to the attribute manager here on the bottom. So it gives me a direct access to both of those panels. And so in this case, let's go ahead and save. Most importantly, we'll save before we start rendering. And then we'll kick off our render here and see what this light looks like.
Whilst you're thinking about that, Dustin, Sharon's asking, imported from ZBrush, is that a new Cinema or Redshift feature?
The GOZ or the poly paint?
The poly paint,
yeah, the poly paint is newer for that to be coming through.
It's from ZBrush, and now we can have it in Cinema 4D.
Okay. Woo! All right, so this is going to be a little bit challenging. Very interesting. Let everything catch up here a moment. I'm thinking I might actually need quite a bit longer of a light. So what we'll do is we can head back to our area light, and we'll name this rim. There we go. So I know what I'm looking at. I can just bring this up above everything else for a moment. And we'll change back from disk to rectangle, and then we're just going to make that a bit longer so that we're going to get a little bit more directly in the model here. It's just going to bring those reflections down quite a bit further. All right. So in this case, I could drop my value of the light, but what I think I actually want to do is grab my background and move this a bit further. And so working with kind of the inverse square, what this is going to do is kind of make the values on that backdrop from the light intensity, a bit darker. So we'll see here, I can scale up my background. There we go, and that's not too bad. Now, as I start to move my rim light, this is going to be pretty interesting. I'm not sure exactly what location I want this light to be at. With the ear, this is the hard part about multiple lights. So with the ear here on camera left of the zombie, my thought would be to have a little bit of detail or subsurface in that because you can see it better there. And so what I'm thinking is that we can focus on the left side here. I usually, for some weird reason, I like my key light to be camera left, personal preference, but I think we might just change this and see if we can make that happen with the key light camera right. And from here, we can go ahead and create a new plane. So this plane is going to be our key bounce. So this will be pretty interesting. There we go, and it's already working a little bit. And now what we'll do is place a Redshift tag. Redshift object tag, there we go, right on our key light or our key bounce card. And I think right away, we'll just go ahead and turn off secondary ray, or primary ray, sorry. There we go. And so now that is hidden from camera.
You're very calm. You're very calm with this, Dustin. As we were talking before we started, Dustin was saying that I hope I don't get multiple lights as a restriction, because that's your go-to thing. That's what you use more than anything else, isn't it?
It is. But this is fun. I talk and teach a lot about pushing yourself out of that comfort zone, and I'm not an exception to that, but it's definitely different. So what we can see here though is that we are getting some really nice bounce from that rim light, and so we can start to adjust the size of this key light or this key bounce card here. And this is really starting to give us kind of the same effects of a key light. And because we have the longer, what I would call a strip box in the back, this is going to give us a little bit more flexibility rather than having kind of a small disc. And if I were to work with, say, something like the spread on that area light, and I were to focus that in more, it would intensify the light that we have as long as it's pointed in that directionality fall off. We would have more intensity on the key light or the bounce card here, but we would also be losing some of that spread. So right now, no matter where in that general direction that I place this bounce card, we should be getting some type of light from it. So I'm going to start with this up top. And for key lights, we'll see if this is actually going to work for us. For key lights, I generally like to work kind of offset. So about 45 degrees normally. Let's see if I can just get in here. We're not quite working on materials yet. There we go. So I like to work about 45 degrees off of the side of my subject's face. And then I'll rotate the light here to face the subject. We'll see how that affects the bounce here.
Chris is really enjoying where you're getting with this, and also answering lots of Redshift questions on the way, and suggesting you color the planes as well.
Yeah. So we're actually going to play with that. We'll see how. What time is it? We got about a half hour, and so what we'll see is if we can get get the lighting nailed down, and then we'll start to work into materials. Because the lighting for me is definitely one of my favorite aspects of 3D as a whole. But it's very interesting to do things this way and a little bit differently. So I see that we have bend the cards. Maybe we could definitely bend the cards. That's not something I feel like we need to do. Usually I'll try the simplest method first, and I feel like we're getting quite a bit here. What we might do is actually put a bounce card on the bottom, and so man, we're going to have all the planes in here today. So let's go ahead and put the plane and we'll call this floor bounce. And so this is going to help us really brighten up some of the shadows that are underneath. And so I have two ways that I could work with this. I could work with this with the material, or I could work with this in its, we'll say like a general visibility in the Redshift tag. And so with the environment being black, I think we might be able to go ahead and do this with the Redshift object tag. So we'll go ahead and do that. I can press down the controller command key and drag our Redshift object tag up to our floor bounce. So this is going to hide it from the camera visibility. And then let's see here. Where are those options?
Giuseppe is suggesting, is the key bounce a light? I think he can get away with this. This is, as Pajot said in the comments earlier on, as if you were in the park with a reflector.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not a light. If I don't have any in here right now, but I've done things this way. Say in some of my cosplay photography work, I would definitely use like just white foam core, and you put it right up behind that key light, or in front of the subject, but bouncing directly off of a rim light. And you get very similar effects. It's a lot easier to manipulate this in 3D than it is in real life. But it definitely works. So as this is progressively rendering, we can see quite a bit of the details except for the mouth cavity there, which I'm kind of fine with getting lost, just given the nature of like a darker photo this way. So I'm actually not going to waste any more time with that. And let's start with materials. So I'm going to save this.
You're not wasting time because light is everything. When you have the right mood, then the materials, it's not easy, but it's easier.
So let's see, to color the lights now or color them after. I say let's color them now. Let's just do that. We can work with lighting completely and then we'll move in. So we only have one light to add color to. And so let's see what happens here. So we'll go in, and I'm thinking usually I like to work with like a warm cool. It's just a color scheme that I enjoy. So we'll work in full brightness. And now the interesting part about this, because our bounce card is reflecting, we're going to get something very monochromatic. And what I haven't tried before, and because I can't use say like a mesh light or anything like that, is to use a material on our key bounce, and we'll see if we can counteract those colors. I'm not sure if that's far enough or close enough to actually make the type of adjustment that I'm looking for, but we're about to find out. So let's see. We'll head into our materials. I'm just going to double click to create a Redshift material here, and we can bring that directly onto our key bounce. And we're not really doing anything fancy here. So what we'll do is go ahead and turn our reflection weight all the way down. And then we can take our color and let's start to counteract the orange that we have going on here. And so what we can do is actually head into the rim light here. We'll right click and copy the color. And then we can head back into our Redshift material tag on the key bounce. I don't know if you guys can see the fly buzzing around my office, but that's another distraction for a different time. He's making his rounds today. All right,
No,
so
we don't see
Redshift
it.
material. All right, diffuse color, right click, and then we can paste in. And so now our key light and our rim light are the same color. And what we'll do here, let's see. How do I want to do this? Let's use the color wheel for the color chooser, and then we can go and grab the direct complement or the coefficient, just kind of the complete opposite color of the color that we have for our main key light. So we are getting some of the break there. I don't feel like it's going to be a perfect process because we're bouncing without any other light in our scene. But I do like the look that we're getting here. So now I'm just going to start working towards a bit more of a blue hue to this light.
There's some discussion in the chat about whether or not a fly in the studio needs to be on the next poll.
Fine. Just keep them in a jar and we'll leave them. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Okay, so I like the look that we have here. It's nice and cinematic. This might be a wallpaper for my phone here after the stream is done. So now with this, I do want it to be a bit brighter. But since it's not a light, what we can do is actually move this closer into the subject here. And this is just moving the bounce card a bit closer, so the light is going to get a bit more intense there. Now, the one caveat to that is when I'm moving this in, it is also softening the light quite a bit. So I could make this quite a bit smaller, and that would definitely help us out in that regard. But I don't think we need to. I feel like we're okay as it sits. Yeah, we still have a pretty good look going on. So we're going to leave this here, and I am going to start off with the material side of this. Are there any questions that are popping up here, guys?
I did have a question because it's interesting watching you work, Dustin, versus how I imagine you usually work, where you can just throw in another light to quickly illuminate something. So is this changing your interpretation of a scene and how you would your art? Is it changing your art, this technique?
Yeah, I mean, from a place of, technique, like this is definitely not the most ideal way to go about it, but it does also create very cool looks when you do it this way, just as it does in photography. So when I'm shooting cosplayers, you can get very cinematic looks with one light, and I feel like that's something that's often overlooked. We get wrapped up into gear and what we can get, and this is one of the fastest ways that I teach people. Like it's not all about gear, but I still believe that lighting is everything in photography and in 3D, and so knowing how to get by with the gear that you might have, it could be one light. Doing something like using a floor lamp from my living room instead of a $1,000 strobe. It's a challenge, and sometimes it's fun to do that stuff. So yeah. Let's see here.
I'm really amazed by it's very soft look with the bounce card. It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I like the look a lot. What this is actually doing is making me realize how much I should probably work with less at times. Like this is, it gets very easy. And most of the work that I do, like the cosplay world, I'm matching the light that I shoot in studio, in my 3D scenes. But in this case, products could probably be the same, but I would treat this maybe like a daily piece of art. And, for my personal artistic style, I like the dark and moody cinematic vibes like this. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should do it more. It's definitely fun to have the challenge.
One comment that comes up often when we visit different studios is wanting to break people out of their styles that they get used to and introduce new ways of doing things and just making it look different. I know there's more to it than just make it look different, but encouraging people to have different methods in their final renders, I think also is something which comes up again and again.
Yeah, for sure. Like this, it's definitely different. You take all of your lights for granted until you get to this type of thing, and we can change it. All right, so before we move on to materials, where are we at? Okay, we're doing okay. Not horrible. Let's go ahead into our light, or sorry, our camera, and I can use post effects. Haha. So what we're going to do is we're gonna. Yeah, I'm excited. So what we're going to do is actually just enable some bokeh, and we can use our focus picker from the render view, and we'll just focus on the front eye here and let that pick up here a moment. And then we can change to focus distance, and this will allow me to adjust my circle of confusion radius. So we'll go to maybe something like 0.1, and then I can just start stepping it from there. 0.01.
More comments on the question. We've had several over the last few minutes about the bounce cards and different techniques. I think, Lionel, you were talking about the reliance on GI for that.
Yeah, the bounce card is going to bounce the light, and this is GI. This is not direct light, and direct light is faster to compute. But with the bounced light, you had this very soft look, which I love. I'm really, really surprised and amazed at how beautiful it looks. It's so nice with just one light.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, it's and it's actually doing a pretty good job of countering with adding the color to that bounce card. I wasn't sure how well that would actually work. Let's see. Do I need? Maybe I just need to start pushing it quite a bit further.
Yeah.
I wasn't wanting to go that high initially, but we definitely needed to go up a bit higher. So we'll find somewhere kind of around 2. I feel like that looks pretty neat. And then we can adjust our aspect.
When you're doing these things, Dustin, how far do you push real world versus what's possible in 3D? So from your photography experience, do you find that you have to keep a reference with reality so that people can be convinced that that's what you would do if you were doing this within the lens? Or do you give yourself freedom to just experiment and go beyond what's physically possible?
It really just depends, to be honest, on what kind of project it is. If this is something I'm doing for a client, and they request it to be a bit more realistic, then I'll do a realistic. But I like to work with artistic taste. Like it's 100% my preference when I'm able. But that's not always it's not always the ideal situation, when in the freelance world. So, but yeah, I mean, I like to think of how I would do it in the real world, and then we don't have things like light linking and physical, practical photography, and so I used to stay away from light linking, and now I definitely use it when I need it and when I get a chance to. Okay, so what I've been doing here, and we can kind of zoom in a little bit, is I'm adding just a kind of a fake motion blur here to the bokeh for no real reason other than the fact that I like the way that it looks. Just makes it a little bit more kind of dynamic if you were to maybe visualize this guy running towards the camera. And what I did is I used the circle of confusion and boosted that up a little bit here. And then I took the aspect ratio for the bokeh and I just stretched that vertically. So that's where we're starting to get the motion blur effects without actually having to add motion blur here. So at this point, let's go to our bloom and we can add some bloom and glare. We can go ahead and drop our threshold all the way down for a moment. And then turn up our intensity and see what this does.
Michael is suggesting at this point we need to release the bees to join the flies in your studio.
Yeah, can you see it? Is that a thing? It is literally flying around and it like lands on my head. And I should have kept my hair, you know, it wouldn't be so distracting. And so yeah, softness, I'm bringing that down just a little bit so we get some of a harder edge to the bloom that we have, increasing the intensity just to make it a bit hotter. And then our threshold is going to allow us to cut this off within this tolerance. And so I definitely like to have a little bit more of that bloom or that wrap that's happening. So we'll try something like 0.5. And I think that's a pretty good place to start.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, it's definitely if I were to take this into Photoshop, I would definitely throw some type of fire or flames behind this guy and kind of push that a little bit. I don't know. I love post-production. So materials. Before we go, yeah, what time do we have? Okay, so we are pushing it a little bit more than I thought we were. So before we get into the full bit of this, remember that we have the Vertex color. And so what we're going to do is use that inside of what I think we'll use the standard material for this. That's one I haven't played around. We'll just start challenging all of the things here. And so what I'll do is in my material manager, go ahead and hold down the plus icon. We can go to materials and then we'll go down to standard at the bottom. And then we can also bring our node editor back. Whoa, and that went quite a bit crazier. All right, so let's save this a moment and then I'll switch back to the layout here and just help us reset that so I'm not I'm not wasting the time to go in and adjust it. Feel like we're stalled. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do here is inside of the node editor, we want to pull the vertex. Where I'm going to start is actually probably the skin. We'll start at the skin of the zombie and then maybe work towards the suit and the blue details there. So whether we get to finish the whole thing or not, hopefully we'll see a couple ways that we can go about various things here. So let's go ahead and start off. I'm going to press C in the node editor to bring up our asset browser. Kick the fly off my head here. And we're going to look for the vertex. There we go. And we'll see the vertex attribute. You can double click. And now what we'll do here is just go ahead and take the vertex attribute. We can plug that into our base color on the standard material. And then with the vertex attribute selected, we'll see that we have the attribute name here. And so what we're going to do in this case is let's grab, which one is it? I believe, trying to find the skin here. I think it might be the extract.
Whilst you're looking at that, Dustin, I think we probably might better mention something about the decimation, because Lionel, we are working with models that are reduced in poly count, aren't we?
Yeah, they are. They actually it's been done in ZBrush, I believe, from the people from ZBrush. So yeah, because Cinema 4D doesn't like too many polygons. I think this one is under 10 millions. I don't remember the how
Yeah,
many we discussed.
I think it was 9.5, something like that. But that's
Just at the limit.
it's worth mentioning that in terms of responsiveness and how long it takes you to process things and how long you've got for your deadline, of course.
Definitely. And
Right.
something that we didn't talk about today is that once we get the models in here from ZBrush, if I was just working quickly, I might go through a process of polygon reduction and maybe remeshing to make this a little bit less heavy in the scene. It is slowing down a little bit, but not too bad to where we're not able to work with it. All right. So with the vertex color, we can see now I went through and found it. So we have our skin of our zombie. And so what I'm going to do is select my vertex attribute, and I'm going to select the vertex color tag or the poly paint tag on our skin object in the object manager. And we're going to bring that down to the attribute name inside of this material here and give that a moment to refresh. And so if we want to view this, we can go ahead and solo that map by itself.
Yeah, this is one of the features I was referring. With the new node editor, it's easier. You don't have to connect to the output anymore. You just solo, and you can map keyboard shortcut to it. It's really nice.
Yeah, and it definitely helps if you put your material on the object that you're trying to view here. I realized that my brain was going way too many steps in a direction there. Okay, so updating. What's that?
Yeah, I think the vertex attribute is a bit slow because it's a very, very heavy mesh. It's taking time to process.
Yeah, I think it was, oh man, what was it maybe 9 million polys for just a few pieces. There's quite a bit of detail in there. I'm just going to save this a moment if it will let me. There it goes. Okay, so now with the vertex map soloed, we can see exactly what that looks like. And I want this to be a little bit more, we'll say fleshlight. And so we're just going to, it's going to keep updating geometry. I could actually freeze geometry once that's done, and we'll see if that helps us speed along a bit better. Since I'm not really planning on using any type of displacement or anything for this.
Yeah, it is better. Free geometry is very useful. I don't see many people use it. Most of the time, what's taking time here, updating geometry, that's exactly the case.
Whew, there we go. All right. Every time that happens, we get scared. I feel like that's one of those like very slow breathing type of moments when when this starts to get a bit crazy and things lock up. But now we are rolling. So we have our skin detail. We've already looked at the poly paint that we have there. And so inside of the standard material, what we're going to do is just move straight down. Let's see if I can expand the attribute manager, and we'll close the material manager for now and give us a little bit more room here. All right, so we'll head down to subsurface, and let's see if we can adjust this a little bit. I'm just going to crank my subsurface all the way up here. There we go. We can already see that that's starting to take effect.
What are you trying to achieve with the subsurface artistically?
It's with this one, I feel like I really don't need this to look so, photorealistic or reality based. So I'm not really going off into like what I would consider to be like a multi-scattering type of deal where we're like defining each layer of skin and vessels and all of this different stuff. With this one, really, I'm just looking to get something a little bit more what I would consider zombie-like, or maybe being able to see hits of that subsurface scattering, and kind of this weird tendon-like bit of flesh.
Mm.
But
really
we'll see how it is. Right now, it's not as much of technical as it is just experimenting. I didn't really check any of the bits of the model out for scale and things like that when we got started. So it's very hard to do that in a technical standpoint.
You've really brought out the zombie aspect of the flesh there with just that one technique. Certainly grisly.
Yeah, it looks, yeah, it's definitely up there. So I'm going to add to my radius color here a bit. And then we'll see if we can actually drop this value. Maybe even desaturate a little bit more for the main color.
The art director has been on the phone and says that you've got 2 minutes before your deadline.
Yeah, art directors are great, aren't they? Okay, so the hard part about this is that we are only using one light. So that key light really isn't bringing a whole lot of detail over, or that bounce card. Because once you start to get into subsurface, it's very light based. And so I'm realizing that that's going to be a bit difficult, and that's fine. We can quickly, not annul, we can open up the material manager. And what we'll do is set up another standard material here quickly. And we can use this for the suit because I feel like the biggest, these are kind of the two bigger pieces of the model here. So we'll go ahead and press C to bring up the asset browser and Vertex. There we go. Vertex attribute. We can plug this into the base color diffuse. And now from here, we can go ahead and grab the poly paint from our suit and drag that Vertex color tag directly into the attribute name. And they should update for us here because we have our geometry frozen. It shouldn't be so slow. And then we can take that material and replace our suit material tag. I may have to restart the rendering.
Still a nice separation you've got of those different materials from the suit to the skin, especially with that edge lighting. Really interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely what I would normally do in this case. We can talk about this a little bit. Let's go ahead and save a moment, and I'll restart. See if this will let me resend it.
Yeah, maybe the freeze geometry doesn't let you pick up the color from the vertex. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
restart,
about that one.
then we'll see.
When you're working in this way, Dustin, do you rely on input from the client, or is it the other way around? You're making suggestions and they're saying yes or no to various different options. I mean, how involved do they get in the creative process?
It really depends on the type of client. It's hard. There are some clients that have very strict style guides in the way that things need to look. They've spent years putting all of that together, and that's what we're creating. When I have the chance, I like to be as much of a part of that creative process as possible. So making suggestions, maybe delivering a slightly tweaked version and saying, hey, here's what you asked for. This is what you wanted. This is what I would creatively see, from my vision and what I would like to go with. It really depends on what the timeline is, what the budget is. Some projects are, you have a bit more creative freedom than others, and there are times where you just have to go in and just do what you're asked to do, and that's how it is. So I'm locked up here a moment. It's updating.
Some projects only have the budget for one light, it seems.
And a whole lot of polygons.
Yeah, it's the combination of a lot of polygons and the vertex color attribute.
That's
really grind the render.
Definitely. And so normally if I'm working with with an artist that's, say, creating a model like this, I would ask for the maps, kind of much more of a low poly version of the model, with maps for displacement and normals, things like that, to be able to work with this a bit more fluidly. Now, we definitely went for a challenge on this one, and we're like, hey, here's the ZBrush sculpt. Let's go ahead and put it together. But it's definitely nice. There we go. It's definitely nice to see like how well this has actually worked up until this point, because there are like I thought my computer was gonna croak. So I won't lie. It was I thought we were doomed initially once I first opened it. I was like, wow, there's a lot of polygons there.
Brian was saying that the latest Batman movie had, it seems, a one light limit as well, just because of how dark it was.
Oh, nice. I haven't seen it yet. Is that bad?
No, the lighting is beautiful, but it's really dark. It's really cinematic and moody. I loved it. But yes, it's very dark. You need to see it in an unlit room with some good screen and good condition.
Nice.
So yeah, I think it's the freeze geometry you put, because
it's in kind of, I think, stuck in like maybe an update loop.
Well, since we have reached the end of the deadline, we're going to say that this is what you've achieved, which looks pretty fantastic to me.
Yeah.
It's fun. I enjoy. It actually makes me want to work with this type of thing a lot more. As an artist, like once you get into this and you've done it for a long time, you start to focus on every single detail. So the lighting, materials, the fly's not dead yet. Do some fly chi in here and see if we can get it. So you focus on lighting, materials, like a full process and pipeline. And I feel like, as far as kicking out quick kind of artistic explorations, I love the look of clay renders, and so this really kind of makes me want to get back into that. And messing around with just a standard clay render with lighting setups and gobos and bounce cards, and start to have a lot more fun with it.
This has been really good, and for exactly those reasons. I mean, that's what we were hoping to discover from this process. From when you originally made the suggestion, I said, hey, this would be a really great way to stretch people creatively. And so it's great to see this actually in action, and to see that, and to inspire you to work in a slightly different way on your next project.
Yeah, this is definitely, it was cool. We had kind of like a love loss when, what's that? I know, and then here it comes back in. So, when I made the idea, it sounded great. And then as the days started to get closer, I was like, oh man, like, wait, this is really happening. I definitely have to go there. But I do know that we're already over. So let's explain a little bit of the process here before we hop off of the stream. Because I'm working with one light, there are, when we're working, say in this case, we have to brighten up that suit quite a bit. And so the way that I would go about this is I would take the vertex attribute, I would plug a color correction node right after this, and then start to raise and adjust those values. And at this point, I could place more bounce cards in the scene and, really start to try to bring that up a little bit more natural. But this is where I would definitely not worry so much about how the lighting's balanced, and I would worry a bit more about actually balancing the material itself to the lighting conditions. So yeah, it's been fun. Like I might actually, I'll have to finish this. I'm gonna save this one. I'll finish it up.
Yeah.
It's fun.
That would be good, and we can post it as well. Post it on the Maxon channel about the final render, to see where you got there with a few more tweaks.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
To wrap things up, can I grab the screen back from you, Dustin?
Sure, go ahead.
Make myself the presenter. Here we go. So this was a really interesting exercise, and thank you everyone for taking part with this and for punishing Dustin for not doing anything wrong and limiting him. But it raises an interesting point, because now we've excluded one light from this. We need your help with adding a replacement tool that we can't use for next week. So if you have some suggestions, please send them in, training@maxon.net, or even put them into the survey that you get when you quit out of this webinar. And that'd be really interesting, because next week, Lionel is up. So
yeah,
perhaps
I'm scared now.
You don't sound so excited.
The mistake I think Dustin made was by admitting that he likes to work with multiple lights, and so everyone was like, "Oh right, okay, let's limit that." So, what's your favorite thing?
Say anything.
You're not going to say.
I won't say anything.
I don't blame you. As Michael says, you can't use the mouse next week. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And don't forget, if you wanted to rewatch this again, you can look at the Maxon Training Team and check out the recording of this week, and also all the weeks in all the sessions that we're doing on here. So really, really appreciate your input. Thanks for the lovely comments and the interesting suggestions along the way. Hopefully that has helped you consider how you might use lights in the future. And if you do have any examples, please post them. Yeah, send this to us, tag us in at Maxon Training on Twitter. We'd love to see your renders and what you do with these techniques.
Definitely.
But, until next time, thanks so much. Thanks for being such a great sport, Dustin. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that was fun. Maybe I'll be back later on in the month.
Yes. The bar's been set, Lionel, so look forward to next Monday where it's your turn.
I am too.
Cool. Thanks a lot, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.